Welcome to the Above Board Podcast. I am John Kennedy, certified financial planner, and today we are going to jump into something that I think everybody can benefit from, and it's called budgeting. Not a good word, not a fun word for most people. Now, many people that at least talk to me, I hear this all the time about how they're bad with money math, and you've heard me say this before actually on this podcast. That's just not good enough anymore. You can't excuse away financial problems by saying you're just not good at it. That's no way to get ahead in life. And there's so many tools and things, out there, podcasts and things out there on YouTube. There's so much information to learn to get better at money math, and it doesn't take that much work. I don't expect you to know it like Matt, my co-host on this podcast, or myself as a CFP, but everyone needs a budget. Everybody in life needs a budget. Now, most people think it's boring, it's restrictive, or maybe it's just uncomfortable to talk about. Now, it's kind of like maybe a little bit when my wife will start talking to me about plans for the day or the weekend ahead, and I immediately want to change the subject because it starts to overwhelm me. Not that I don't care about it, but I just don't think I have the capacity in that moment to think about all the things that I have to do tomorrow on the checklist or all the activities that we have. Now, that might be you listening to this podcast right now. You might be thinking I don't want to talk about budgeting. Please don't turn today's episode off. Let's lean into it together and let's just learn a little bit more. So today I'm going to talk about just some quick tips in this mini episode. I don't want to cut things from your life, but I do want to help you take back some control of your spending. What better time to hear this conversation than right now around the holidays, where many families are spending like it's going out of style. So if this is you, listen up, let's learn, let's get a little bit better. Budgeting is not about limiting what you spend. It's about deciding what's important to you and then putting money towards those priorities. So if we start with this idea in mind, I think it can help us plan and maybe save up for a big purchase instead of, for example, the current cycle that many Americans are in, which is point of purchase occurs, and then we spend weeks, months, or years then paying off that credit card. This is a very vicious cycle that keeps you in debt, and it keeps the credit card companies profitable. P.S. Those points are not designed to benefit you. It's to encourage you to spend more to benefit them. All right. So, and anyone that knows me knows that I feel that way. I have some friends that listen to this podcast that are big advocates of playing the point game. I get it. Points are exciting, but ultimately it encourages you to spend more money. In fact, statistically, there are studies that suggest that the average American spends about 15% more over the course of the year. It designed to get those points that if they weren't using credit cards, they probably wouldn't have spent. All right, I digress. We're going to go over 4 quick hit principles today that I want you to know about. And I'm going to try to break these into just bite-sized tips. The first one is the 50-30-20 rule. This is an awesome starting point for anybody new to budgeting, or they're just trying to come up with a new way to think about it. And it very much ties into planning for those priorities and what's important to you. So here's how it works. 50% of your income goes towards things that you need, like rent, mortgage, utilities, groceries. 30% goes towards wants, those things that you enjoy in life, but you don't need to survive. And 20% goes towards building your net worth. So that's things like your savings account, your 401k, maybe some debt repayment, stuff like that. And yes, you heard me right, 20%. This would be overly aggressive since the national average in the United States in 2024 is 4.4% savings rate. So much, much lower than what I'm suggesting, which is 20% in the 50-30-20 rule. Now, the second one is tracking your spending for 30 days. Now, before we can make big changes, just spend 1 month, invest a little time in tracking your spending. You'll be surprised how much clarity this gives you. It is not about judgment. It's an exercise of awareness. This is a really dumb analogy, but I just did this 2 weeks ago. I started tracking my nutrition intake. Now, I think I'm a pretty healthy guy, and at least in my own mind, I tend to think I choose healthy habits most of the time. So I downloaded this app called MyFitnessPal. I'm sure you've heard of it. And I tracked it for 1 day. 1 single day. And I thought, this is going to just prove that I'm doing so good. And man, was I so wrong. I had no idea how much sodium I was putting into my body. This simple exercise for 1 day was enough to change my habits immediately because it created awareness that I previously did not have. And I think the same thing happens when you track your spending for 30 days. The dollars add up quick, just like the sodium and the cholesterol added up in the MyFitnessPal app. And I realized pretty fast that I needed to make some changes. The third one is using the envelope system either digitally or physically. This is an old school method. It's still killer to this day. It works wonders. Allocating a specific amount for certain categories like dining out or entertainment, and then you use this cash envelope or through apps or by some other means of tracking, you use a digital system. And so, the other alternative is you could go to www.yourmoneystory.app to learn more about how we do it for ourselves and for our clients. It's kind of a combination of an already created Google Sheets or Excel doc that I've made for you, along with access to our online live tracked money dashboard where you can do the budgeting in real time. So it's definitely the 2025 version of the envelope system, which really works well for us. But I still have clients that do the physical envelope system with actual cash, which is pretty cool too. And then last but not least, the fourth one is automate it. Set it and forget it. Automate a portion of your paycheck. You hear that quote a lot, pay yourself first. Have a portion of your paycheck go directly into savings or investments. Even if it's a small amount like $50 a month, that can add up over time. Now, these four things that I just mentioned were in very intentional order because I think one builds and stacks on to the next one. You can't automate your savings if you don't know what you're currently spending money on right now, right? I mean, that makes logical sense. So if you do that, if you start with automate your savings first without even looking at what you're spending for the last 30 days, you'll just end up creating these unrealistic goals for yourself that you won't hit. And then as a byproduct of that, you'll become unmotivated really quickly. And that's part of the vicious cycle that people get into when it comes to budgeting, because this stuff is uncomfortable and they don't even know where to start. So like, oh yeah, I'll just automate and start saving money. And then they hit a situation where they go negative for a pay cycle or something. And then, it's a pain point and they pull back and they say, forget it, I'm not going to do that. So here are probably the most common objections that I get from folks that tell me I don't do a budget or I don't want a budget. And the first couple are it's too time consuming or it feels too restricting. These are my favorite excuses. My wife and I probably spend about 20 minutes per week on it now that everything is set up in this like systematic automated way. It still requires investing some time, but it doesn't need to be monumental. We spend about 20 minutes a week and we set out to, we kind of aim what we're going to spend each week. And we use this digital envelope system with the use of additional checking accounts with debit cards. And we can easily see where things are going and what we're spending on. Yes, sometimes we fall off the rails. Yes, sometimes we don't hit our goals. But at least we know where we're at. That awareness is so important and it helps you get back on the wagon and then figure out what you need to do to fix what you did last week or last month. Another one I hear often is that my income is too inconsistent. For those of you that have a variable income, you're in a sales job, maybe you're a freelance, 1099, base your budget on your average low month. Anything extra can go towards savings or debt. This is going to be a little bit more time consuming because there's going to be fluctuations from week to week or month to month. So just know that going in, it's a little more time consuming, but you can definitely do it. So here is your challenge from this podcast today. Pick just one of these things and try starting it in January, whether it's just tracking your spending for 30 days. That's going to go miles for you in the long run, or thinking about the 50, 30, 20 rule and how that can apply to your situation. Remember, a budget is not simply about saying no. It's about saying yes to the things that truly matter to you. And healthy day-to-day money management leads to the accomplishment of those long-term financial goals that you want to hit, like retirement at a certain age. So start today and let's take a little bit of control. Thanks for joining me on the Above Board podcast today. If you found any of these tips helpful, share this episode with a friend. Please don't forget to subscribe. And if you enjoyed this, but feel like maybe you just need to go like one step further and you need a little bit of help with that additional accountability around your budget, that's pretty simple. Go to www.yourmoneystory.app and invest the time. It's not a dollar investment. It's a no cost e-course, but invest the time, 2 to 3 weeks with me to truly change how you manage your finances. We'll see you next week. Thanks again, as always, for hanging with me today. Take care. Bye.